Today we're doing a headliner recover on a early 90s Chevy pickup. This type of headliner is real common in vehicles from the 80s and into the late 90s, maybe even the early 2000s. You got a cardboard panel that's held up in the cab. In this case, it is held up by what we call Christmas trees, little plastic tabs. And originally it was covered by a foam-backed perforated vinyl. We're going to be recovering it with headliner foam. It's a 1/4 inch foam with a fabric on top, very common. It's not a very difficult thing to do, so I'll walk you through the process here. Maybe you'll learn something. We're starting the video after we've already stripped off the old material. As you can see, this black or kind of gray, this is the remains of the old foam. And the foam is what disintegrates. And if you've ever had this going on in your vehicle, or it's happening right now, the foam starts coming apart, the fabric liner starts drooping down, the foam itself was falling down, it's getting in your eyes. It somehow always ends up in the eyes, and it stings. And it'll never stop. It'll never finish all falling out. You can't shoot glue up there to fix it. The only way you're going to be able to get rid of that issue is to take the panel out, peel the whole thing off. We stripped the foam off. There's a little bit left, but not much. We stripped the foam off. We used a wire brush, steel wool, and a gasket scraper to gently scrape all that off. We've rubbed it all off, blew it down with shop air. So now this has a good surface for the glue to adhere to. So we're ready to start putting the fabric on, and I'll show you that now. So we got 1.5 yards of the headliner foam here, and we went with a little more versus a little less. You can always trim it, but if you're too short, well, then you're screwed. As you can see, it looks like just the right amount because it'll cover everything, and I don't think 1 yard would have done it. So 1.5 yards was good. Standard fabric yard is 60 inches wide by 36 inches long. So keep that in mind when you're ordering. You're never going to get any fabric that's wider than 60 inches. This is the glue we're going to be using today. You can get a similar glue from 3M. This isn't what professionals would use because they would have usually it's DAP weldwood that comes out of a can. They pour it into a vacuum pickup spray gun, but if you're going to do this at home, this should work fine. The thing to remember with this type of glue is you want to put it on both surfaces and then let it get a little tacky. If you do it only on one surface, it ain't going to work right. And if you try to put it on while it's still too wet, it's not going to work right. It is a pretty long working life. You got a couple minutes to deal with it. So it's not that hard, but just make sure you get it on evenly, but not too thick. The real important thing is when you're doing on the foam side is don't saturate it with glue. Okay, if you got too much glue in there and then you apply too much pressure on the top side, the foam will actually glue itself together and you'll have divots. So we're going to try everything we can to avoid that. So we got both pieces glued up. They're tacky. We're going to take that and we're going to set it on there and then flip the whole thing over, and then we'll smooth everything out. So now we're going to take a piece of foam and we're going to use that as we smooth everything out to avoid putting handprints into the foam with the glue. Even strokes from one side to the next. It's nice that this is so small. I can reach all the way across it in one go. Not pushing too hard. We don't want to compress the foam. If you use a lot of glue and then you push too hard, you compress the foam into the glue and it'll glue into itself. So this particular headliner doesn't have any bezels or interior trim that's going to cover up the edge. So a lot of headliners will, and you just cut them flush. But because this one doesn't, we're gonna need to glue a little bit back here and roll everything around. So, got both sides glued up. I'm gonna go around, roll the edges over like this. I'm not pushing anything too hard yet. If I see something I want to go back and adjust, hopefully I'm able to do so because I haven't pushed on it and really set that glue up. You get in the corner like here, you want to do this. Roll both sides, and then you have a pucker or a dart here, and that'll get trimmed off flush. Alright, let's see what we got. Well, what do you think there, Mr. Cameraman?
I think that is awesome.
Okay. We'll trim it up on the back side, and then you can put it in.
Okay.
So I flipped it over, I looked at everything. I'm pretty happy with how this is turning out. So we'll go ahead. We've already pushed it all down and secure it. Here's how we finish off the corner. Like that. Do the next one. Okay, now we got to go around and mark all of our fastener holes, and then this is ready to install. So this headliner was held in by clips coming up through and into the ceiling of the cab. So we got to locate those holes, and you can come along and feel them. There's one right there. I use an awl. I'll punch the holes, just a small hole so we can see it from the other side. Here's where the dome light goes. There's a bezel from the other side that'll cover all this, but I'm not going to cut this flush. In fact, right now, I'm just going to cut through it in the center enough so that we can get the wiring and everything through when we install the panel, and then we can trim that out to fit. Never cut anything ahead of time too much. If I were to cut all that out and find that the bezel doesn't cover it, then we've ruined the whole job. So here we are, all installed. It's a hell of a lot better than what used to be up there. Matches the interior okay. Originally they had white, and then they had white clips. So we couldn't get tan clips, went with black. I think it works because the black trim on the dash. But yeah, that's, you know, these were pretty simple trucks, so it's not like you can really do too much with them. The original cardboard was a little warped, but it was still usable. You want to try to save that if at all possible, because if you don't have that, then you're gonna have to make one, and that's a little bit more of a challenge. But we got to put the visors in, but they're right there. The holes, we'll find them with an awl, just poking around gently with a pin or something. Locate the holes, mark them, and we'll keep the old material just in case for that purpose. That's one reason you want to hang on to this. If you were to get confused about where your holes are, you can always check it out with the old fabric. So there you go. Old early 90s Chevy headliner install. That dome light was a motherfucker. I really hated this generation of trucks as far as the way they put the interiors together. And they're neat trucks, but like that dash, oh, it's a fucking nightmare. All right, there it is. Time to drink some beer.